welcome to the August rendition of the Oregon City Business Alliance Forum. What I had shared is that we are doing it in person again today here at the Abernathy Center for all of those that wanted to come and listen to the presentation, as well as by Zoom for all of you that are in your offices or at home. You can attend by just hitting the link and joining us live. We are live now. We started a little later than our usual time, just so that everybody that is here in person could go through the buffet line, get seated, and be ready for the discussion. I'd like to make an introduction. Jerry, if you'd like to bring your crew up here and introduce them for our audience. Jerry, it's all yours.
Thank you, Andres. This is our Rivers of Life Center Youth Crew, only part of this summer. We want to introduce them to you. This is Timothy Miller, a crew leader. This is Curtis Johnson, a crew member. This is Jerry Miller, no relationship, who is another crew leader. And where did that Cody guy go? There he is. I'm sorry, Cody. Cody Hines. So these are the folks that are doing a ton of work in Oregon City right now on a number of sites and other areas, including Happy Valley. So I want you to meet them and say hello. And we're very happy to have them here.
Boat tour that they did on the Willamette, where we took off from Sportcraft Marina and went up to the falls and then down to the confluence of the Clackamas and Willamette. Very interesting, entertaining, and very interpretive. So we appreciate, Jerry, all the work that you're doing here in Oregon City and elsewhere. So today, I'd also like to introduce one of our elected officials, State Representative Mark Meek. I know for those that are on Zoom, you can't see Mark, but he is here. Today, we have the honor of having the Clackamas Community College President, Tim Cook, as well as the interim superintendent of Oregon City School District, Kyle Laier. As you know, schools are going to be reopening soon. It's been an interesting year in 2020 as parents, teachers, school districts, school boards, everybody had to deal with a change in how things were done by doing completely remote, or for the most part, completely remote teaching. But here we are, we're looking forward to having everybody back in the classroom, being able to see their friends, being able to interact with their teachers. And we really look forward to hearing what changes the school districts are making to their curriculum to kind of allow the kids to really reintroduce themselves to being in the classroom again. I'm sure they're going to go through a transition of their own. Obviously, we do have the mask mandate that's in place, and I believe all teachers or people entering a public school building will need to be vaccinated by October 18th, I believe is the date. So continue to stay tuned to what the latest updates are as the Pfizer vaccine has now been, has received full vaccine approval. You're probably going to see some additional guidelines with that. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Kyle Laier to go ahead and give a presentation, and then he'll be followed by Tim Cook. Kyle?
Something just happened on that screen. I hope it's not a bad thing. Are we good back there? Okay. Hopefully we are. I just can't see anybody anymore. So I don't know if that means we lost our Zoom or if we're just on presentation mode. But William's going to come up, and I will share. I want to thank William. I know he connected with me after one of our bond oversight committee meetings and said, you need to come and talk about what you guys are doing with career technical education related to the bond efforts that we're completing this summer and then a little bit through next summer as well too, because our business community is going to want to know what those things are that we're doing to really expand career technical education outside of just what has historically been high school pathways into an experience that kids have from the moment they come into kindergarten through when they graduate in 12th grade. So I'm going to share a little bit about that with you today. I also know that you have a lot of questions on other areas. I thought for a second I was going to get an hour away from pandemic conversation, but it sounds like you might have some questions around that too as well. So we'll do that in the question and answer portion of this. But starting off, we have a lot of changes. It's working. It's just not working on my screen. We have a lot of changes coming this fall that we would have had even had we not experienced the pandemic. So in 2018, obviously this community was gracious enough to pass a significant bond, which has allowed us to do a lot of different projects around the school district. But one of the things that we did differently in this bond effort is that we really took it as an opportunity to not just go and replace and upgrade the facilities that we have, the aging facilities that exist within our school district, but we wanted to also take a look at what do we want the experience of students to be? What do we want our students to be able to do when they graduate from high school? And how do we design buildings that support that type of teaching and learning? And so we went on a very different path than many school districts go. And William is telling me to stay in my lane, okay? This is a common thing I'm hearing. But I do move a lot, so William will probably have to do that a few times. But we went through a process where we really engaged our community, some business leaders, industry, community members, parents, and most specifically, a large group of students in terms of designing what it was that we were going to put in place with that bond. And so I'm going to focus a little bit on that, how that really redesigned the education that we see students getting as they come through the Oregon City School District here in the future. And I'm going to start with just a little bit on the bond. I know many of you are familiar with this. Huge thanks to Chris Story, who's in the back, who's a huge portion of getting that bond passed as a board member. But we would focus on prioritizing safety and security in every school, which you will see safety and security upgrades at each one of our buildings. I'm not going to talk much about those today. Get the question answered. But then the two other areas that I am going to focus on are reducing overcrowding and replacing and upgrading 2 middle schools, which was really the catalyst for us to look at how do we do things differently. If we start at the elementary level, we vision out what we want that education to look like, and then in the future we continue to move that down to the elementary schools and up into the high school. And then with that, also updating school buildings and learning spaces. And really this one here, it's not labeled this way, but a lot of what this really became was a high focus on career and technical education. So I'm gonna give you a quick overview on that. But to start, there are people who tell this better than I do. So I'm gonna show a quick video. And it's related to our middle school redesign. And it talks a lot about. Thank you. And the worst part is I have to listen to myself for a short period of time. But this does talk about the middle school design process and how thoughtful we were in terms of what type of education do we want students to have and how we design those buildings to meet that. And I'll talk a little bit afterwards specifically about how that played out in our elementary buildings, a little bit more about the middle schools, and then also about our high schools as well too. I think we're ready.
Laier, Assistant Superintendent for the Oregon City School District. And I'm excited to share with you how our community came together to design and build some extremely unique and innovative learning environments for our middle school students. This happened through really 2 different efforts that were going on at the same time after the gracious passing of the 2018 bond by the Oregon City Commission. This is an effort that's being done by school districts throughout the country. It really focuses in on aspirationally, what do we want to see for all of our graduates? Every student that comes through our system, what are those 21st century skills we want to see all of them be with so that they can be successful in the future? We were able to develop a vision for where it was that we wanted our students to go and the skills that we wanted them to build as they followed through our community from kindergarten through 12th grade. That began to give us a vision of what we wanted education to look like. Our middle school design team came together, and much like a portion of the graduate, brought together industry people, people from the community college, board members, students who played a huge role in this, educators and parents to design our buildings. And we quickly decided that we were not just going to create a new building that looked like the buildings we had from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. Instead, we decided to design a building that was designed around the type of education we wanted to see our kids experience here. And so as you listen on throughout the evening, you're going to hear from a lot of our staff about where we're going educationally, what that's going to look like for our students, and what these amazing environments are going to do to support that. We want our students to come to a school where they can courageously become whoever they're going to be, while still feeling that deep sense of belonging. We want our students to be able to collaborate, think critically, and work on authentic projects that have meaning beyond the walls of the school. We want our students to be reflective so that when they make mistakes, and everyone makes mistakes, that they learn from them and their product gets even better. We want our students to care for themselves, for each other, and for this place, as well as the world around. Collaborative, authentic learning communities that work together on real life projects.
UDL for universal design learning is a framework that is inclusive and effective for all learners. It reduces barriers and provides students choice in their learning. And I'm excited as an educator that we are implementing UDL in our schools.
Grounded research, culturally relevant practices form connections between what students are learning in school and to their background knowledge, life experiences, and culture. And what this means at our new middle schools is that students will be working with content that is relevant, that requires critical thinking, and it will honor the wealth of knowledge that they come with.
So design thinking is really great because it allows students to solve real problems using a process that engages them in the community around them and thinking about real life issues and allowing them to use the tools that they have. It really lets the students kind of explore from where they're at, and it's much more equitable than giving them all the same kind of thing to work on.
We're going to be doing a lot of problem-based learning. And problem-based learning is when kids can use empathy interviews to come up with solutions to some kind of worldwide problem that we need them to solve, and that they are excited to solve. And we go through a whole process. They will be interviewing each other, they'll be interviewing other people outside of our school community. They'll also be coming up with different solutions to problems that we have throughout either our school or kind of our community.
We want our students to be future ready, much more than we want them to be test ready.
Now that we're transitioning to a new way of learning, we're going to focus on student learning and proficiency grading. So proficiency grading is a score for 1 through 4, 1 being the basic and 4 being above mastery. Using dynamic standard-based scorecards to give parents and students more information about their learning towards those standards.
I want to thank everyone in our community for passing the 2018 bond. Middle school and early adolescence is an extremely important time in the development of the child. I truly believe that the physical changes we've made to the buildings, the mindsets that we're bringing into our school culture, the instructional practices that our teachers have been working so hard on improving and innovating, and the proficiency-based grading will put a focus on the individual student in a way that inspires them and helps them fully develop their potential as they move towards adulthood. So thank you once again for your support, and look forward to seeing our community and our buildings, seeing the amazing things that our kids are going to do for years to come.
All right, so I appreciate you listening with that, Bill. That encapsulates it a little bit better than I probably would have gotten up here and done. And really, there's a couple of things that I know you've heard through this, which is a couple of keywords: 21st century skills. So I know some of you know me from my time at Case, but as an educator, I've spent a lot of time working with industry and with businesses to figure out what is it we need to be doing within our school systems to make sure that we have a workforce that is ready for the jobs that are available to them. And what we do know is traditional education, as we've done it, some of what was described in there being very independent, very assignment-based, is not the world that kids move into as they become adults and they go into work. It's more project-based. It's more having to work with other people. It's more having to be able to think critically and be innovative. And so we're trying to change our practices to match up with that and partner with some of our industry partners to make sure that kids are engaging in things where they're not only learning that content, but they're engaging in those 21st century skills to make sure that they do know how to collaborate, that they do know how to communicate effectively, that they're able to understand others and they're able to see problems and create solutions that maybe we haven't thought of before. And that's a different way of approaching things. And so we've created some spaces as well with that bond money to be able to have that type of education in our classrooms. And I know some of those terms up in that video are education jargon. But really, when I think about my time of working with business and industry, what I've heard over and over again is those 21st century, or as we call them, industry soft skills that are not being developed, that have not been developed traditionally in our schools, are things that are deeply needed. On top of the academics that we've always provided our students, and that we've recently, within this last decade, significantly increased in terms of the level of rigor and expectation that we have of our students. And so we're really excited to do that with our kids and to have them working in this fashion. And it really, one of the things that was mentioned, and I was just gonna talk about this briefly, and Chris, I'm gonna point you out again because he was a part of this as a board member. We look deeply as a community at, of those 21st century skills, there's typically about 16 to 18, if you look at those different lists, which are the ones that we want to have a high level of focus on in every single classroom from the moment a kid walks in the from kindergarten and graduates in 12th grade. And we identified as a community, really focusing on making sure that we have kids that are collaborative, making sure that we have kids that are creative and kids that are perseverant. And so those are things that when we work with our teachers going into the future, we want to be looking at the activities, the projects, the assignments, the collaborative work that they're doing. Are they developing those 3 skills? And if we don't see those in our classrooms, how can we get those in our classrooms? So that when graduates from Oregon City High School, Clackamas Academy of Industrial Sciences, or Oregon City Service Learning Academy, when they graduate, they're walking out with those things, and industry and business people and community people are saying, these are the things that we see from those graduates. This is what we know our school district is instilling into our students. And then with that, I'm gonna go through these next ones really quick. Couple of things, career and technical education wise, trying to think of what are some of those big items to understand of what we're doing different, not only in our CTE classes, where we do specific career and technical education, but in all of our classes. And some of the work we're trying to do is, one, be more interdisciplinary. So you don't just go to math class and do math. You don't just go to English class and do English. That's not what we do when we get out into the world of work. Like, those things come together. And so what projects can we put in front of kids where they're being involved with several disciplines at the same time? The second part, you heard this throughout the video, project-based, especially projects that are authentic and relevant and real right now. We've had kids in the past year that have worked with PGE on electric solutions, and amazed by what our kids were able to do when they were actually given a real world problem versus maybe a story problem in a book that was traditional that had no meaning to them. And then talked about 21st century skills, and the most important part of this, I like to say this to groups like this, is we've had a history of this over the last several years. We're continuing to increase the amount of community and industry partnerships in working with our kids, whether it's specifically working with them on a project or it's coming in at the end of our project and providing them feedback. We want our community and our industry members to see what they're doing, to give them feedback, to give us feedback so that we can continue to improve. So those are some of the things that we're doing in that area. And then just specifically with the bond, real quick, I think we are maybe the first school district in the state that has specifically made an effort to start putting in, some people call them maker spaces, some people call them wonder labs, but specific facilities within an elementary school that allow them to do project-based learning, career technical education at the elementary level. And so we have 2 pilots of this, one at Gaffney Lane Elementary that's being constructed, one at Redland, where kids have the ability to go in and do things that they typically would not be able to do in an elementary school, project-based wise with community partners. And beyond that, they also have mobile labs within them that can go out so that the things that they can do in a regular classroom, they can now engage in those as well too. These are things that we hope will become a normal part of all of our elementary schools as we move forward. And we're piloting them with those 2 schools right now with some community partners to really increase that career and technical education at the elementary level, a place we normally don't see it. Middle school, I cannot wait to show you guys. These pictures do no justice. I was telling Chris earlier, walking through Gardner Middle School the other day, it's phenomenal. Like, this community is going to be so appreciative, I'm sure, of the spaces and being able to see how flexible they are to allow kids to do things in classrooms that they have not been able to do in a traditional setting. And then lastly, I'm going to do this quick because I know Tim's itching to get up here. He told me this is the most exciting portion of the day. At the high school level, a couple of really exciting things. One, we did the first bond project we completed was an additional makerspace at Case. We are completing one at Oxlaw right now to enhance the areas that they have and the things that they're able to do project-based wise. And at Oregon City High School, we have a couple of projects going on, but the 2 most significant are a significant upgrade in the culinary arts area. We have culinary arts, it's highly used by students. It looks a lot more like our kitchens from about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and it's now gonna look like a professional culinary space to allow kids to engage in much higher level work in that area. And we're also obviously looking to go beyond just what do we do to create food, what's the business behind that and things like that as well too, to prepare them. And the most exciting one is we found an opportunity to add a career and technical education program. And we picked medical health sciences, which is gonna be starting this year. Unfortunately, we're only able to fund for 2 classes this year. We look to expand it. But the first time that class went out, and this is not only for high schools, the first time that class went out to students, we had 500 of our 2,000 students trying to enroll in those classes. We know that's a high wage, high need area in healthcare, and we know that that's something students want to engage with. And we're going to have one of the best medical and health sciences labs that any high school in the state's going to have. And so we're going to be really proud of that. Can't wait to show that to you in the next couple of weeks. And so with that, I'm going to catch my breath, hand it to Tim, because I know we're moving quick. Thank you.
Well, Tim's coming up here. I just wanted to let everybody know that's watching on Zoom that you can go ahead and submit questions to us via your connection with that link. We do have a series of questions, and we're going to be saving those till the end of Tim's presentation. But please go ahead and submit your questions, and we will do our best to get them read. Okay, thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Kent. Thanks, everyone, for having me here today. I was excited about the title of this presentation because we are great partners with Oregon City School District. You'll see some of the data behind that, but I'm also a proud 1986 graduate of Oregon City High School. So I'm just thrilled anytime I can come and talk about all the great education I got from the school district here in town, and then how that has informed our work here at the college. So, pull that.
Should we turn the lights down?
Well, I just want to make sure that the presentation, there we go. Perfect. I was just waiting for that. So I'm going to go through and give you kind of an update on kind of where we've been, and then more importantly, where we're going as we segue into questions here today. So no question that, how do we get that one up on, do I have to do something over here?
Right there. Top.
There we go. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. So quite a year, 2020. Don't need to tell anyone here that. In addition to a pandemic, we had wildfires, we had ice storms. We actually lost a number of our cooling systems during the 100-something degree days. It's the one thing we didn't have this year was a snow day, which was really interesting. We prepare for those, but all these other things that came up were really a challenge. So I like to remind people, there we go, how quickly that we had to change gears and how quickly we had to respond to the pandemic. So this is a real quick way to see, back in fall of 2019, pre-pandemic, just about all of our classes were face-to-face or hybrid, so some component of face-to-face. Within 10 days, spring of 2020, and by fall of 2020, we essentially flipped that model, and just about everything was online. We never closed, and I get that question a lot. Is the college open? I was like, yeah, the college has been open through the entire time. We just were offering most of our classes virtually and most of our services virtually. But to do that was a pretty phenomenal task, and I kudos to our staff and faculty for really flipping that so quickly. But there's a certain number of impacts to our students. It has impacted not only our students, but then the enrollment of the college as well. We participated in a statewide survey and a national survey from Real College. And so these are the results of that. And we actually have some results here specifically for Clackamas too. But because of the pandemic, 12% of students were homeless. A third of them lost their jobs. 28% saw reduced hours or pay. 47% could not concentrate on their education, and that ended up impacting. We hear often from students that they just can't do it all. 21% didn't have access to laptops or internet, and we tried to do what we could with that to help them either get laptops or get access to that, but it was a challenge. Almost 40% were taking care of family during that time, and then a whopping 45% had applied for employment, SNAP, or other emergency aid. I mentioned wildfires in ice storms and everything. I just want to really quickly again, and I think it's a great example of our community college and what we can do. During the wildfires, we became a Red Cross site for a couple days. We had llamas and chickens and goats and everything on campus. I think there was even a parrot that I saw on campus. And then really quickly we had to evacuate. and because the fire was approaching. And we ended up having about 250, 300 firefighters on our campus for 10 days camped out and fighting those fires. So we're really proud about that. And then during the ice storms, we turned into one of the 2 places that people brought their trees and debris and got chewed up, and so they could clear that out as quickly as possible. So I'm glad that we're able to be a resource, not just for education, but for other pieces of it. Also very interesting, we had a historic year in giving and scholarships. So, the cost of education continues to grow, but we were able to award, almost $750,000 in scholarships to students. And, this one, about average 1 to 2 applicants receiving scholarships is pretty phenomenal. And we're able to take care of most of the needs that students have. Average award, 2,161. That's in addition to any grants they get or any other financial aid that if they get to qualify for that. Because actually the cost of even community college education now is, a little over $5,000 a year. So just to put that into context. So post-COVID, we've thought a lot, we continue to think a lot about how are we positioned to respond to education needs post-COVID for our community, making sure our students are ready for the business world and get out to work, and that we're doing what we can to make sure that they're ready for that too. Part of this is how we position ourselves intentionally in the community and how we're offering resources to the community, and it means more than just education. So one of the biggest ones that I'm really excited that we can finally announce here this last several months, or last couple months anyway, is our partnership with Clackamas Volunteers in Medicine. If you don't know them, they're right at home Olalla, completely free healthcare clinic. They don't charge anything for people that meet their requirements, and it's a lot of people that meet their requirements. They're in a very old building, and I mean, I can't describe. You have to see it to see how bad that building is. And they're being evicted from that building next year. I think it's going to get sold or demolished or something. So a couple years ago, I ran into Martha Spires, who's the executive director, at a Rotary meeting in Reno City, and we started talking about what would that look like if they were housed on our campus. And so we're very close now to making that a reality. And what is exciting about this is that this means that most of the students at Clackamas Community College, probably many of them at Oregon City High School, will have access now to this healthcare clinic. It's going to be right on the Oregon City campus. What's also exciting is our healthcare students now get some practical experience right on campus, helping out. So they're very excited too to get access to our students and to our nursing program, our medical assisting program, and the rest that we work on through that. I've got to thank Representative Meek. This is we had to raise quite a bit of money to basically create a health facility in one of our older buildings. The representatives got some money from the federal government from the stimulus that they could allocate to some projects. Representative Meek stepped right up and had the first project several $100,000 that he dedicated to this from his funding, and from what I can tell, it put some pressure on some other legislators to follow. So we got nearly all the funding from our legislative coalition to do the remodel, and then Clackamas County stepped up and did the rest. And so we're ready to start that remodel here this fall with the hope that by the spring we'll have folks coming through that. So pretty exciting. Kyle mentioned Makerspace at the elementary school, and we just had a we just had a grand opening last week of our Makerspace at the college, named after Les Diosas from Benchmade Knives. And so what's exciting about this is a building where you can come in now and there's a traditional wood shop in there, and there's a traditional metals shop in there that you would, if you're like me, you remember from back in high school, learning how to do some of the basics. And there's what we call kind of a high-tech shop in there as well, where if you want to do 3D printing, you want to do some laser cutting, you want to work with a 3D welder, or a robotic welder or a CNC machine to do some of this work, and you're somebody who has an idea, or you're a hobbyist that want to get this done, we have Friday nights you can come in, Saturdays you can come in. We'll probably expand to Sundays and other days that community members can come in and use this equipment. It's also really exciting because we'll have, starting this fall in partnership with Oregon City High School, we're going to offer these Makerspace classes to Oregon City High School students before and after school, so they can come in and learn how to do some of these traditional woodworking, metal making, and the rest that's been missing for some time. I like to mention the Holdens weren't from Oregon City. They were from Malala and Estacada. But these are folks that believed in what we were doing for career and technical education. Didn't go to Clackamas, didn't have an affiliation with Clackamas, just had been hearing what we've been doing, and ended up giving us our biggest gift ever at the college. $5 million to dedicate towards scholarships for students that are coming through for career and technical education, but also for an endowment so that we can always have state-of-the-art equipment and continue offering career and technical education. And from what they tell us, you know, they're so happy with what we're doing that this is the first of gifts that they're going to look at for the college. So it's just one of those things that I think as you do good work and as we continue to do this, people see that and want to support it, even if they haven't even been there. So what does learning look like post-COVID? This has been probably the biggest challenge. We'll continue to be the biggest challenge as we go into this next year as we move forward. It's very interesting. We've done a number of surveys. We've been really tracking our students and then non-students and seeing what they need. We've got, I would say, probably about 20% of students, maybe a little bit more, that love being completely online. It's great for them. They can't get to campus, or they're working, or the hours aren't working for them. It's fantastic. We probably have about another 25% that absolutely hate it and can't learn online, want to be face-to-face, or trying to figure out, how or when they're going to be able to come back face-to-face fully, and the rest. Because right now, about a third of our classes, overall classes, are face-to-face. All the rest are online, and we continue to kind of up that as it gets safer and safer to do so. So as we move ahead, we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the mix, and how do we really meet the needs of everybody? Research is really clear. We knew this before COVID. Hybrid is the way to do it. Hybrid is the sweet spot for education, for learning. If you can really think carefully and critically think about what type of education needs to happen face-to-face, needs to be hands-on, and which part of it can you do online where somebody can go back and kind of watch a video or kind of learn on their own and get that mix right, it's the ideal way to do it. We've got great examples where our automotive department this past year took their entire curriculum and said, these components, these elements of this need to be face-to-face. And they pulled all those out, and they would bring in students for a week or 2 weeks and just have them be in the auto lab. And then the rest of the time they could be at home learning some of the theory and some of the other pieces of that. So it challenged our faculty to really think about what's important and what's important that people need to come to the campus and do it. So that's something as we continue on, we continue to look at. You may hear about something called high flex. It's kind of a newer education jargon term. We're doing high flex right now. So some people are watching this on Zoom, some people are here. And it's this idea that every meeting now or every class will have this option of, I'm going to come face-to-face, or I'm going to be able to come on and come on and get it via Zoom. I will say it sounds really great. It's really hard to do well. And early indications are it's not really good for learning. It's pretty easy for somebody to say, yeah, I'll just kind of pop onto Zoom and catch that, or I'll get that lecture. And if you're like me, you're like, yeah, that sounded really good, but I'm going to go do something else right now, and probably not pop onto that. So we need to, as we look at offering options for people as we move ahead, we've got to be really intentional, because we've invested some of our federal money to set up classrooms and set up conference rooms and the rest, so that we have the technology to offer education anywhere and any time with people in person or outside of it. But is that really the best way to do it all the time? And then why are we doing it that way as well? It requires some intentionality. So I'm going to look at my notes here, because I want to make sure I get some of this right. So I started off this really talking about how proud I am of our partnership with Oregon State High School and Oregon City School District. We've had a long time partnership, and it's not just because of geography. I mean, it certainly helps that we're that close together, but there's been a thoughtful partnership for a long time. And I want to call out Oregon City. We work with we have 10 different school districts in Clackamas County. We actually work with several more outside of the county. One school district continued to work with us during the pandemic. I'll let you guess which one that is. And so we really, really appreciate continuing on. That the rest of them had a number of reasons why they were challenged to do that, but anyway, it's pretty impressive. So our expanded options program, and these are, excuse me, the big one is advanced college credit. So these take places, these are high school teachers that have been certified to teach with us. And if you look at this, even during the pandemic, 4,669 credits that students earned at Oregon City High School, saving $500,000 in tuition to their families is pretty amazing. The expanded options is where they actually come to our campus and take those. So this might be more of a focused CTE class or something else. We had 49 students earning the 653. And then we do have a class that we've gone down and taught at Case, and our faculty actually going over there and teaching that. So we had 25 students in that manufacturing class. So pretty impressive group. We continue to meet, our folks continue to meet and talk about how we can create these pathways. So as the Oregon City has their bond and is working through a number of programs. We talk intentionally about how do we look at curriculum so that students that are taking this as a junior or senior can get credit for it while they're doing it, but then also have a path to continue on. If they want to learn more about manufacturing, they want to learn more about healthcare, and that it's a seamless transition for them to come on and do those in the campus. So some of these ones as we move through, and these are what I was talking about a little bit about, not just the maker space, but a number of pathways that we're starting up here this next year with Oregon City High School that would take place before and after a traditional day. And so just these are a few of them: music technology, manufacturing, fire science, auto body, automotive welding, wilderness firefighting, and the rest that we have that will be available for students. So Case students used to come to our campus and take these classes in there. And now as we look at these, we're figuring out sort of how we can make these work for students in and out, whether they're Case or whether the other, the traditional high school. I wanted to mention something new this year that we just got a grant for, a federal grant for, called Clackamas Scholars. Tuition-free, federally funded grant, allowing adults ages 16 to 24 to get academic and employment skills. This is something, again, it's entirely free for these people that qualify. So whether they need a GED or high school completion, they're getting career readiness training, they're getting counseling and job placement assistance, they're getting one-on-one advising for this. And so this is in a number of areas: machine tooling, computer science, health sciences, electrical engineering, welding, industrial maintenance, automotive, business, renewable energy, water environment quality, and several others that we're standing up and really able to offer a number of opportunities for students. So we've been doing quite a bit this last several years around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I know there's some interest in that, about what that looks like. I really try to tell people that what we're trying to do is make sure that the education we offer at the college is available and works for everybody in our community. And as our community is growing and changing, we are really trying to do what we can to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all students. And as we look at our data, we know that we need to do a better job toward recruitment and retention of some of our underserved populations. The easiest one to talk about is our Latinx students, our Hispanic population. We have about 10%. We know that probably if we were serving everybody, we'd be closer to 20 or 25% of students. And so we need to do a better job of reaching out and making sure that we're meeting those students. There's a large Eastern European population in Clackamas County that we're not serving, that we could be serving, and we need to do some work around there. Part of that recruitment intention means that we need to have teachers that look like our students. And we're a predominantly white campus, and we're predominantly white areas. So doing the recruitment, but then the retention of a diverse faculty and staff is something we've really been focused on too. How do we change that so students can see themselves and see the opportunities as they think about that through. And then similarly to a number of districts and the rest, we're really looking at curriculum and looking at it in ways that people can see themselves in the curriculum. They can see examples of their culture or who they are, and so that they're figuring out ways that they can learn to be responsive in that way. I try not to give you the traditional bond update, but I couldn't help. calling out our brand new Welcome Center, or Wachino Welcome Center, named after Chief Wachino, the Clackamas people. It's the chief that actually signed the treaty that ended up having the Clackamas people move down to the Grand Ronde and the tribes move down to the Grand Ronde. But when we were building this and thinking about what we wanted to name our Welcome Center, which is our front door, we're calling it our front door of our college. It's where all of our student services will be. It's where we want everyone to start at the college. So you're going to get counseling, you're going to get financial aid, you're going to get registration, you're going to get everything you need in this building. And when you pull in off of 213, it's what you see first. We wanted that to really represent the Clackamas people of the land that our campus sits on. So we met a couple different times with the Grand Ronde tribe and said, what's the best way to do that? And what would you like? We talked, we looked at like Chinook names for welcome. We looked at a number of different possibilities for this. And they said, the best thing that you could do is named after our chief. It's beloved. And actually the head of Grand Ronde right now is a direct descendant and just teared up when we found out that we were going to do that. So we're really proud of Wachino. You say Wachino, we had to practice that quite a bit. It's like Wachino, anyway, it's Wachino Welcome Center. And that literally opens up in September. And so we'll do some more grand openings around that as it's safer to do so, but we're quite excited about this. And it is the business alliance here, so I couldn't get away without giving some economic impact that we have on our community. Just so to remind you that we're not just up there offering education, we really are contributing. We're making sure that we've got a workforce that is ready, that can come out and meet the needs of Oregon City and of Clackamas County. So you look at this, we're altogether generating, almost $300 million in added income for Clackamas County. 1.3% of the GRP of Clackamas County, supporting 3,766 jobs, and 1 out of every 65 jobs in Clackamas County, based on the activity of what we do. And with that, I think we might be at questions. Good.
Okay.
So thank you very much for having me.
All right, I'm going to keep you up here, Tim. We're not going to let you get away, and we're going to go ahead and bring Kyle up. And I'd like to get the two of you to go ahead and stand. You can kind of see where the camera is located. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab this microphone. We'll get that one. I'll grab that one, and then we can go ahead and read the questions. So I'll leave this one for you two. And then I just wanted to share with everybody here at the Abernethy Center, the blue cards that are on your table, those are question cards. So if you want to go ahead and submit a question for our presenters today, Sherry here will go by. Oh, we already have one. Thank you. That didn't take long. Didn't even have to say it. But I want to thank you for a great presentation, first of all. I'm so glad to see that you're focusing on real life learning experiences. That we're getting away from here's your textbook, here's your assignment, and then here's your quiz and your test. But real solutions to real problems. And that's what the students preparing for tomorrow really need at this point in time. Everything seems to be changing, so it's a matter of teaching them how to think. So with that being said, Kyle, why don't you stand over there? I'll get this mic on. The light. That looks like the light. And I'm going to go over here so I can read. Ready or not? Here we go. All right. How are you preparing the students to be good citizens in our community and local region? Sure. Who got the mic?
Okay, let's start with Mike. So good citizens for the community locally. I'll tell you, that's been a challenge on COVID. Because normally I would say we'd be having a number of different in-class and out-of-class experiences about what citizenship means, and around elections we always have quite a bit of activity and support the rest. And it's hard to do some of that on Zoom. It's hard to do a big forum or a big discussion. So what we continue to do is we offer a number of different classes, whether it's a social science class, whether it's a history class, whether it's a government class. Of course, we have our student government, the rest that we're working through. And then I would say we also offer for all students a kind of entry to college class that we're talking again to about what it means to be a member of a community and what it means to be a good good citizens. So I think there's more that we can do, and I look forward to when we're more face to face, so we can really. I always think of our campus as being kind of a place, a really nonpartisan place where people can come and have dialogue and conversations, and we can be the ones bringing in speakers and bringing in things to stimulate thinking and critical thinking and the rest. I look forward to doing more of that as we're able to come back together.
Yeah, thank you. This is interesting. This is an area that I think, and I will share, and you give a little bit of my background, social studies, government, and economics, teacher in my previous life. And citizenship is something that is definitely built into our standards, and built into certain portions of the curriculum. But there's also a lot of work that we do to create community within our schools and developing with students. How is it we act as a community? How is it that we have, and I use this term a lot right now, civil discourse, because we've seemed to have lost a lot of that recently. And I would be really honest in sharing with you that what I'm hearing from a lot of community members is not asking me to help students become citizens. It's asking for one idea or another idea. And I think we've got to get back to a certain point in time where we really do talk about how we support students in developing into citizens. That's something that I think is going to need to be a high focus moving forward. And we've got some additional work to do there, especially around that, having an inclusive community that cares for one another and respects the ideas and opinions of others. So I know that's an area that we're going to have to focus on, especially as we bring students back into school. I know some of my colleagues in California who I used to work with have had some struggles as they brought kids back into school on the campuses. After this time, it's been fairly fractured. How do we interact with one another, work with one another? Those are conversations we're having in the school district, how we support our students when they come back together as a school community.
All right, thank you, Kyle. The state of Oregon suspended certain reading, writing, and mathematical skill standards for graduates this past legislative session. How do the schools plan on ensuring that graduates are ready and confident for being citizens and members of the workforce of tomorrow?
Yeah, so that really relates to the graduation standard and one of the ways of students meeting that requirement. And I'll be honest with you, I've fielded this question many times. It changes nothing for us. So it's just that actual requirement and that step, which there have always been different vehicles for students to meet that requirement, and those vehicles are still there as well too. But it doesn't change what we do in the classroom. It doesn't change the standards that we have, and it doesn't change what we're going to engage our students in continuing to do. It's just that requirement's no longer there. So I know people have been worried. I got phone calls even from people outside of the state and me going, "Oh my gosh, you don't have to teach these things anymore." I'm like, "No, that's read. That's not what it's asking us to do. Like, we are still teaching and expecting the same kind of students."
Yeah, and I was going to say it didn't change anything for us either. All of our degrees still require a level of math, a level of English, and the rest, depending on what degree dictates the requirements. So they still need to show that met those outcomes. So.
And Tim, while you've got the mic, just going to follow up on that same question that I have here. Talk about the jail program that the college offers.
Yeah, so I think I can't remember which news show just did a highlight of that this week, talking about a deputy actually that had shifted career goals and come out and was teaching out of the jail. So Clackamas Community College, I don't even know how long we've been doing this, but it's been, I want to say decades that we've been out teaching GED classes. We've been teaching some of our basic skills classes, English and math, out of the jail that the college has done. It's not something I think that we get a lot of press about, but it's for me, it's an example of we go wherever and whenever people are needed, and we educate anybody and everybody because we believe that makes a better citizenry for all of us. So we not only go out and teach the classes, but we go out and our career folks and our Welcome Center people go out and talk about what does it take to come and take classes at the college, and we help transition as people are getting out too. If they want to come and take classes, we help financial aid, we help the whole deal with that too. So it's one of those great little, I talk about all the time, all the best kept secrets that we have at the college, which kind of drive me crazy because I wish more people knew about them. But I love when I see stories about that I didn't even know were coming, that just highlight something that we're doing where we're reaching out.
Great. And you touched a little bit on the contributions that the Holdens family had offered at the college. Can you talk a little bit about the contributions that the group, the band Metallica has done to college?
So I get this question more than any other question. Like,
It's a popular question.
did you say usually like, have you met Metallica? Have you met them? So the band Metallica, if you aren't a fan, which I don't know anybody that doesn't know Metallica, has been a band for 40 years, which is amazing. And for their entire 40-year career, I learned all of this because I haven't met them, but I met their manager and met some of their other folks who were all wonderful people. Every concert they give, they typically leave $10,000 or $20,000 for the local food bank. They've been doing that their whole 40 years. About 3 or 4 years ago, they said, what can we do more of? How can we support more and help out more? We've been very fortunate. And so they set up this foundation called All Within My Hands. And they worked with the National Community College Association, said, we want to give out $1 million to support career and technical education. I think that's really important. So they gave out 10 $100,000 scholarships 3 years ago. Literally, it was one of the first things I signed when I became president of the college. One of the deans came and said, would you support this Metallica scholarship? And I was like, yeah, why wouldn't I support that? Or this grant application. And we made this great case and said, we do heavy metal at the college. We do automotive, we do welding, and so we call it our heavy metals, and we call it Metallica Scholars. And so we're one of 10. We were one of the only ones on the West Coast. And what they've continued to do is the original 10, they've renewed our scholarship. This is the 3rd year in a row that we've gotten it. I wish they'd give more money. They keep slicing the pie a little bit thinner, but the amount of money, it's $100,000 they gave us originally. You can't compare that to the press that we've gotten about this, and we get to use their music, we get to use their brand. Our students get masks, they get shirts, they get their equipment, and all of a sudden Metallica Scholars on it. You don't think that is like prideful for students coming in to like have that stuff? Our staff fight over those shirts. I mean, it's stuff that people just are super excited about. So I just want to get them to come play on the quad.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
Are we not in the screen again?
we're just gonna make a minor adjustment. Zoom on.
Now I'm getting kind of dizzy.
Oh, wow.
Just kind of, yeah.
How's that? Can you see yourself?
That's great. Yeah, that works really well.
A little wider view there.
I got a little wider during COVID too.
Now, what you mentioned, or at least I know you did, Tim, and Kyle, I think you mentioned that you were an Oregon City High School graduate as well. No?
I'm not.
All right. Well, I am an Oregon City High School graduate, and I remember going to the shop where we did a lot of work with different types of equipment. And we've got a past president of the Home Builders Association with us here today, Gordon Root. I was curious if you've ever talked to the Home Builders Association about setting up a partnership for students to learn trades at a very early time in their life. Because not every child is designed for a 4-year university. But every child has a certain talent and capability and gift. And maybe you can elaborate on what direction you're going to prepare those type of students that have those aptitudes.
Yeah, that's actually an area I think that we've been proud of over several years. And I think about my time, which seems like a long time ago at Case, and our connections with different trades groups and introducing students to the trades as early as middle school, giving them opportunities to, whether it be the Women in Trades group that we would work with, or some of the other training groups and the internships that we would connect students with. And we actually have a lot of students that came out of Case. I can't say over this past year because it's been such a different year, but in the past, we've had a lot of students that have gone directly into those internships and into those high-paying trades that are of high need. That's an area we want to continue. Oxlaw has started to engage in those as well. They have some partnerships with different organizations where they're getting students engaged with the trades. And then we've continued to have long-term the construction program at Oregon City High School, which we would love to see expand and focus on more than just basic general construction, and move forward and do some other things as well too. We know that's a great area. Those are actually a group of kids I feel very passionate about, because I do think they get overlooked. And a lot of times we think that the school system is set up for those that are going to college, and it's not. We need to be preparing for kids for all of those pathways. And so I'd love to see that continue to expand. And we have had partnerships in the past with that, much more than I know a lot of school districts around us, and we're very proud of it.
Jim, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think I can add a couple things to that. Another best kept secret that folks don't know about us is we train about 1,400 apprentices a year through 11 different apprentice programs, painters, tapers, plumbers, and the rest of it. So they get their education. They're working and then they get their education through the college. Those are formal apprentices, so they're harder to do for under 18. And so we look at ways that we can partner with the school district in different ways that we can get students, kids into these programs. One of the actually more successful things that we've done the last several years, we've had grants to do it, so we have to figure out how to fund it, is we have these free summer camps, 3, 4 a week, where you can come and you can learn some of these skills, whether it's in the our manufacturing or welding shop, or whether it's in healthcare or somewhere else. And we've offered a whole number of them. They fill up like that, and we just have capacity issues where we can't afford to do any more of those. And so we continue to try to figure out, because it really is important to get to help kids learn as early as possible. You know this much better than I do, but I hear all the time, like, middle school is almost too late to really start talking about this. You need to expose people. I love touring families through our industrial technology center. If you ever want to go through it, I'll give you a tour. It's clean. You can eat off the floor. When everything's working in there, you can have a conversation. It's light. People have this impression, I think, of these facilities being really greasy and dirty and loud. Modern advanced manufacturing is really high tech. And so families see that, kids see that, they see themselves there and see themselves what they could make and what they could do, and it just changes the whole thinking. So we give tours for, I don't know if we've been down to elementary schools, but I know we have middle school classrooms come through there and get tours of the facility, because we need to change the thinking about people about what does education mean, what's higher education mean, and there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, and I've taken that tour, and the amazing thing is the equipment that you have on display at your campus is the same equipment that a lot of the manufacturers are using. So when they graduate, they're basically being trained to go directly into an economic employment opportunity.
Because the businesses helped us design it, and some of them donated equipment to it. So yeah, the whole point was that we wanted to replicate what a real world experience looks like and have it set up that way. So yeah, it was very intentional.
Okay, great. So a little bit of a political hot potato question here for you. 26 state legislatures have introduced bills to prevent critical race theory, or CRT, from being taught in the classroom. What plans or policies do you intend to encourage or allow within your teaching curriculums? And if you're not teaching CRT specifically, are your schools utilizing culturally responsive curriculum or anti-racism or other similar approaches? Is this approach being used in elementary classrooms as well? You knew that was going to come up.
I know, and I will share, I think I'm going to be a little bit blunt in terms of my response to this, and that the conversation around CRT, as I see it, it's a distraction. And the more I talk to people who have the concern, they're either uninformed or they want it to be a distraction. CRT specifically does not exist within our state standards. It's not something that's within our curriculum. And once again, I believe it's just meant to be a distraction. I also would say a lot of people who come to me around CRT don't know what it is. They've heard it on the news. They believe that because it's on the national news, it's happening in Oregon City, and they've got some level of issue with it that typically, and I'm being very blunt, can't describe, but it's a reason to rally. And right now, to me, it is a distraction. And it's getting in the way of a lot of the good work that we're doing. And we asked the question about citizenship the other day. It's getting in the way of developing citizens. It's getting in the way of developing a community that is inclusive of all people, whether disability, ethnic background. This conversation is a distraction. What I can tell you is we do teach equity. We do teach about different people. It's in the state standards. And what I share with people when they come with me with those distractions is, have you looked at the standards? Do you want me to send them to you? And you want to see those, because that's what we're teaching. We're teaching to the standards. And if you look through those standards, and I'm not going to go through them, I would encourage people to look at them if you have questions. Look at what they are, and then look at what's being reported. And you'll be able to tell that there is a significant difference between what's being reported and what we are actually doing with our students. And so it's a little bit of, well, it's not a little bit, it is a distraction. I'll be really honest with you. Now, that being said, one of the things that I do get asked is, what if the kid decides to look into CRT? So let's say we have a high school student that's engaged with a high level critical thinking standard, and they are allowed to pick their subject. Could they pick CRT? Yes, they can. And they can engage in that, and they can think critically about it. And they can think about whether they support it or whether they're against it, or whatever opinion they want to have about it after they study. And I hope that our school systems continue to allow kids to think critically and not start to shut down kids looking at different things and considering for themselves and having opinions about those things. And the other portion of this I am just going to share because it's on my mind and it relates to this conversation. Is often when this comes my way, I'm also told by adults that kids aren't capable of thinking. Kids are capable of thinking. And I know that our community members, our industry partners, and those that work with our kids, they usually walk away understanding our kids are way more capable than we believe they are. And a common theme I hear when I hear about CRT is our kids are not capable of thinking themselves. And that's just not true.
So I'll be blunt too. Critical race theory is 40 years old. I mean, I remember reading about it in grad school 20 years ago as like as a theory, as part of like a number of other learning theories and the rest. And so when it came up again, I was like, where did this come from? And it just seems so, it's such a red herring and just really not about it. So, I guess knock wood, community colleges have largely avoided this conversation. It's been a real hot potato for K-12 districts across the country. As I think for some of the reasons Cobb mentioned, that people really don't understand it, but they've heard it's bad and want something done about it. I tell you bluntly, we think about barriers at the college. And a couple of years ago, I was at a training, and the stat I heard was that African American men, college students that are African American men, if they test into below college level in math, their chances of graduating college are zero. And so it is ethically immoral. It is immoral to take their money. How can, if you know this and you know that you're not doing anything to help these men as they're coming through, how can you take their tuition? And I thought about that. I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And so what does that mean? It means that we have a moral obligation as educators to say, what barriers are in place here? And what supports are we putting in place to make sure that that's not zero, that we're helping people come through? We're talking about race because race is the bigger issue, the bigger challenge in helping these inequalities. But the other one that people don't mention anymore is the number of men with college degrees has been declining for several years. And it's a real issue as you look larger. And I'm not talking about just men of color, I'm just talking about men have been declining. And so some of that's really good. We have more women going to school, we have more women graduating. But if you look at the demographic trends, there's a concern if we don't look at men coming up and say, what are the reasons why you're not able to complete or not able to finish, and what do we need to do about that? Clackamas County has one of the largest numbers in the state of undereducated citizens. And I'm talking about the whole state, but it surprised me. I had to ask a couple times when I got this. These are people that maybe started college, maybe didn't start college, but when you look at the raw numbers, we have one of the largest numbers of people that have not received an associate's degree, college degree, any kind of aspect. That's an economic issue for us. That's something that we should be concerned about. We should be wondering about what's going on and what are we doing to really help them get there so that we have people that are ready to work.
All right, great. Thank you. I appreciate you elaborating on your responses. From the Zoom audience, what is the plan going forward with regard to reaching the students at both ends of the spectrum, especially at the middle school level? I guess that would be in the financial spectrum, where their living standards.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, I didn't understand that question at first. So, connecting with students and making sure that they have support. So, one of the things that we've experienced recently is the student investment account, which is meant for that specifically. It's additional funding that we have received from the state to put into places different supports that help fill some of those gaps that students have in terms of their need to be able to come to school and be engaged. As we know, students have different challenges, whether it be at home, community, what have you, and they need different types of supports to be able to come to school and to be able to engage fully and not to have to worry about some of those things that our kids have traditionally had to come. and carry on their shoulders and worry about during school. And so we're actually really excited coming into this year that we do have that extra amount of support within our schools. It was needed prior to the pandemic. It's obviously even more needed as we're coming back out of this, and we're bringing students back in. So there are a lot of pieces in place for that, and it's at all levels. In the Oregon City School District, we did focus more of that at the elementary level than we did the middle school and high school level, because we have already had additional supports at those secondary levels, and several of them through partnerships that we have as well too. But the area that we saw a great need at, that we've known for years, we just have not been able to fund it, and we needed those extra supports with elementary. So you'll see a bigger boost at the elementary than you will at the secondary levels. But really excited to have some things in place that should have been in place for decades at this point, and just haven't been. But we'll be going into this year.
Okay, while you still got the mic, another question for you, Kyle. Let's see. Will the new remodeled middle school be up and running for the first day of school?
Yes. Yes, I cannot tell you how, and I say that with a small amount of hesitation until the day it happens, because we have navigated this, but our main contractors, our bond office, our project managing team have done a phenomenal job of sticking to the vision, making things happen, adjusting in our older buildings to things when we pull the walls apart that we didn't know were going to be there, or weren't there, but were there on the plans. And have still somehow, with that and supply chain issues, been able to deliver a school that is going to be ready on time. There may be a few things missing in a couple of our locations. One example is we have these, they call them nano walls. They look like these big glass doors, and they're like these doors back here, except they're glass for transparency. And they're one thing that we have a hard time getting. And there's a couple places where they may not be there the first day of school, but will be functional and ready to go with almost all of our projects.
Okay, that's good to hear. Staying along that same topic, what was the public process that led to renaming Ogden Middle School to Tumwater?
Yes, so we had a change at the middle school level. This started actually a couple of years ago with 8th grade students at what was formerly Ogden Middle School, as they were researching pioneers. Were you in Ogden Middle School?
I am.
All right, okay, I was a teacher there, so we've got some roots. And these students had been researching and realized, we have a school that is named after someone who lived here for a very short period of time, somebody who had been convicted of a murder. And is that really what we want our schools to be representative of? And so they went to the educators and they researched it more and looked into the board policy. There's board policy, obviously, on changing the names of schools, followed through with that. And because of the pandemic and the time period that we were in, passed that off to some 6th graders who are interested in carrying on that project. And that went forward, and there was a lot of community engagement in that, most of it because it was during the pandemic during Zoom, which I know makes that a little bit different. But there was a public process for that. We were able to, they narrowed it down to several names, and really, especially from the student focus groups that we had, really wanted to focus on Indigenous names. Much like we talked about with the Welcome Center, honoring those who had this name influence. And so that was something that happened, and they chose Tumwater, which is for the falls. And they chose to not go with the kind of Eurocentric name of Tumwater that you see, at the high school, and then there's a middle school here in Hillsborough somewhere, but to go with the actual Indigenous name, and they did work with the Grand Island tribe on that as well.
All right, great. One more question on the schools. The district is finally shifting high school to start an hour later. What challenges do you anticipate from making this long-needed shift?
That's the least of my challenges. Honestly, I don't think we're gonna have challenges. We went through a process, we looked at this closely. We were prepared going into last fall to start to make this shift. So we've had some additional time to get ready for it. There are some of the challenges that we knew would happen in terms of that day going later and how that impacts athletics and some other activities. But they're not challenges that other schools that have that later time. And just so people understand, we had one of the earliest times, and I'm trying to think back, if not the earliest time of area schools, and we know that that's not best for that age group. And so we have shifted that to later. It's created shifts at the middle school and a really, really minor, like 5-minute shift at the elementary schools. But we think we're ready for it. I don't believe it's going to be a big challenge.
All right, we're going to transition now to the Clackamas Community College. So Tim, your turn for the mic. You had a slide up earlier that talked about different monies that have been given to current students in the past year. presumably the majority of that came from the federal stimulus acts. Can you speak to the process of decision-making regarding the distribution of those funds?
Yeah, actually, that slide was all private donors and people that are in the community. That the slide showed the 737,000. What we got from the federal stimulus to give directly to students was nearly $7 million that we were directed to give to students. And we had a lot of stipulations on that, like we couldn't tie it to a free class, or we couldn't just, dictate how it was. We needed to just distribute it. We had some leeway about how we distributed to students. So we created some formulas, and we, based on whether a student was full-time, whether a student was a GED student, the rest, and put out those funds, almost $7 million over. It wasn't just a one shot. We've kind of done it quarter by quarter to current enrolled students, and they've got to check. Even our high school students, I gave you that slide about students that were taking, getting a high school class credit. One of my buddies who I graduated from high school with goes, "I got this check from you for my son that, he goes, do I need to return that?" I said, "Well, if you want to, but it's, it's really, coming through the stimulus act that we just wanted to get, the goal was to get it out as quickly as possible on the students." You saw that earlier slide I had just about the challenges that our students have. We talk all the time that many of our students are just one flat tire or one tank of gas away from dropping out. So we didn't want to get too convoluted. We just wanted to get the money out and get it out to students who maybe were trying to pay rent or trying to buy food and trying to get that done. So that's what we did with that.
Has all the money been distributed?
We have until, I'm trying to remember, I think it's early 2022 to distribute all of it. So we'll distribute this fall, and I believe this winter, probably the last of it.
Do you recall what the average amount of the checks were?
I don't. I know there were, I think some of the biggest checks we gave out were over $500 to full-time students that we sent back, but I can't remember what the average was. So, and then there were some pretty small ones that they were doing, like a GED or something like that.
Well, remembering my days in college, anything helps.
Oh, yeah. And still, it makes a huge difference. And so, yeah, but I do want to highlight, that $737,000 we gave out was due to the generosity of our community. And I can't say that enough. When the pandemic first hit, we asked staff, donors, everybody to come up with an emergency fund. And within a week, I think we raised almost $200,000 to give to students directly to help. And then I think they've used up all that funding as they help folks out. But that's right here. And so that's pretty amazing.
Are those ongoing contributions, or were they majority just one time? Yes.
Both. So we're fortunate that we get people that are doing ongoing and are supporting, or they put us in their endowments, or they put us in their will or something. Or not endowments, put us in their will or something along those lines. But that original outreach, a lot of people were one time.
Okay, great. All right. How has the college adjusted its internship and in-person training programs in light of the pandemic and workplace restrictions? And what is the school's vision for how these will be done as remote work increases?
Yeah, I alluded to that a little bit earlier. It's kind of everything. Some of these we've been able to not miss a beat, and in places where it's safe to do so, we continue to have internships. Our nurses are a great example of this. We turn out some of the best nurses in the state, and our data around 100% pass rate on the nursing exam for I think 5 years running, we have the best pass rate in the state. They were doing vaccination clinics early on, and so they were right front lines. I've got pictures of them out at the fairgrounds last year, pouring down rain, giving shots, doing things like that. So we didn't miss a beat with like our healthcare programs. They continued to be there. They had to be safe and the rest. Some of our other programs we had to shift and say, how do we do some of this work from an online environment? Frankly, I'm thinking like automotive just didn't go well. It's just hard. How do you can watch some YouTube videos on how to work on a car, but if any new car nowadays, it's going to be a lot. And so we've tried to figure out how do we get students either on our campus to do that, and because of our past bond, we have a much larger open space for automotive, so we can do it safely to do that. But how do we get them out into dealerships and safe ways to do that? So the challenge for us is really trying to meet the needs of everybody. Some of that's online, some of it's face to face, and and moving forward. We've gotten better at it. If you would ask me a year ago, I would have been really concerned about how we're going to make this work, but we continue to be better and better about how do we shift and how do we constantly adapt to these changes. My ask, you didn't ask me if I have an ask. Probably our biggest challenge is having employers that will take interns and will connect with us. It's a lot of work. It's a challenge for employers. There's a risk for employers. They don't always have the skill set or the rest that they need. And we see all the time that, we want somebody with 3 years of experience doing this. And it's always a question like, where are they going to get that? And so we are always looking to partner more with employers and figure out how can we do some sort of on-the-job training, some sort of internship program that will meet the needs so that they're not going in there and just, filing something. They're actually literally learning. Because all these things about citizenship and about showing up and about being a good employee, you can't teach a lot of that. You have to really do it. And so that if anything would be kind of my pushback to everyone in Zoom land and everybody here.
All right, great. Well, I just was told it's a 2-minute warning. So real quickly, question.
Scattershot.
What challenges keep you up at night?
2 minutes.
Okay, your time's up.
To be blunt again, it's morale. People are tired. People are not they're not playing well in the sandbox with each other. And I'm not talking about just community members. I'm talking about people that work together. There's all sorts of fatigue and the rest around this. That everything is hard. And there's, as we go along further and further into this without knowing when it's going to end, people's patience for it has dwindled. So when I think about how do I continue to motivate faculty and staff to serve our students the best they can, it's sometimes those things are at night. I'm like, how do we really get people excited about continuing on as we continue to open up? It's hard.
I think just piggybacking on that, it's what keeps me up at night is that's typically when I'm putting my head down and starting to think about the things that I should be doing. Yeah. And that's the concern right now, is there are so many distractions and so many things that have very little to do with educating our kids that are being forced into the forefront and that are in the way. My biggest concern is we want to get kids back into school full time and get focused on what we're doing so that they get the education that they need to be adults that can be independent, be successful and reach their future dreams and goals. And right now, there's just a lot that's being put, on us to figure out, and then just a lot of distractions on top of it that's pulling people away. We talk a lot about our leadership level, like it's our job to deal with those distractions. So that our teachers and our building leaders can do what we're supposed to be doing, which is educating kids. We just got to get that focus back on that and understand at the same time that level of empathy for why we're in the situation that we're in. But honestly, for our kids, we all, especially as adults within the community, need to get the focus back in on getting kids in the classroom and getting them educated again so that they can have the life that they're supposed to have.
All right, we appreciate it. Can we give them a hand? Well, there was a lot of information that was shared today from Tim and Kyle as to the curriculum, the programs that they have in place, and how they plan to effectively make sure that the students are getting the best education possible. And I really feel that that is the number one priority. And I don't envy you two at all. There's a lot of work still ahead, but I have a lot of confidence that the two of you are prepared and ready to go forward. And I'd love to have you back a year from now to kind of give us a review. We're going into the new year, a lot of variables, a lot of unknowns, and then get a reflection as to how everything turned out. But I think it'll be a very positive report. So again, thank you for coming today. A reminder on your way out, if you could leave your name badges at the entry desk, we'll keep track of them. So when you come next time, they'll already be here. We heard about the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde today. So guess who our speakers are next month? The Confederated Tribe of the Grand Ronde will have their representatives to give us an update on the Legacy Project and the River Walk and some other programs that they're looking to do in our community and our local region. So hopefully we'll have an update on the mask mandate, but in the meantime, continue to wear your masks If you haven't got vaccinated, I highly encourage you to do so. It's not just about you, it's for everybody else, your family. And the sooner we get this pandemic out of our system, the better. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody that came today. I want to thank all of you and my Zoom audience today as well. Thank you for your questions and have a great day and see you next month. Thank you.